I think the subconscious, when sleeping, sleeping with good thoughts and everything. And I always try to tell everybody, we know it's not good to feed your body junky food before going to bed at night, right? But how many of us feed our mind junky thought, feed our subconscious because we fell asleep with the remote control on, the worst, the cell phone right next to you, right? Those kind of things that you allow that some of those fearful, negative, worrisome thoughts to rule your subconscious mind, your subconscious thinking for the next 7, 8 hours. And so I think that's the harder one. I mean, I have to confess also there's time I just jump in bed and everything. And it's like, oh yeah, good night, honey. I'm out. But when I can sit here and really focus, I mean, that's kind of, I think there's something to that.
Hi, everyone. We talk a lot about resilience and growth on this podcast. So today's conversation is just in that line. It's about growth that isn't hype, not overnight transformation, not chasing confidence, not waiting to feel ready. We're talking about becoming bigger and better and bolder, not in ego, but in ownership. Because leadership isn't built in leaps. It's built in daily decisions. Our guest today has dedicated his work to helping the individuals build practical, repeatable steps toward becoming who they're capable of being. This is Dr. Len Lopez. Dr. Len Lopez is a speaker. He's an educator. He's a personal development strategist known for his framework, 5 steps a day to being bigger, better, and bolder. Through his work, Dr. Len equips individuals with structured, practical strategies for personal growth, leadership development, and daily accountability. His approach blends mindset, discipline, and clarity to help people move from intention to execution consistently. Dr. Len, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love all of your work that I have been diving into. It's really been such a pleasure to get to know and chat with you here, just even in the beginning before the episode. There's so much that I think that we're aligned with, and I think that the audience really could really take home with certain things that I think that will be helpful for them. So before we begin, I think it's important because frameworks don't appear out of nowhere. So what in your own life led you to develop that 5 steps a day philosophy?
Well, that's a great question to start with and everything. And I guess because when I was, for those who don't know me, I've been helping people for the last 25 plus years learn how to eat right and train smart. And people would come to me with any kind of aches and pains, weight loss, and other kind of maladies from blood pressure, diabetes, osteoporosis, things like that. And what I really learned was that people would come to me because they're trying to help. What was their motivating factor to come? And a lot of times they would always say, no, doc, I'm here for my blood pressure, cholesterol, my diabetes. Really, people came to see me and others like me because people want to look better. They want to feel better. They want to sleep better. And, and if you're over like 40, 50, there's another reason why they would come see me because they just wanted to that was the motivating factor. And so when people would talk to me about their shoulder pain, their digestive issues, their headache, their hormones, whatever it was, after like the second or third visit, they would share a little bit more about their life. And sometimes the headaches they would share, as I would hear this stuff, I could tell they needed somebody who had this expertise. And not to say you couldn't help with just having good horse sense, right? But it was the fact that, hey, they're here for me on this health and fitness stuff. Do I try to comment on these other issues that it sounds like that's what they need some good horse sense advice on? But I'm going to stick with here because this is where I'm really good at it. And so, but yeah, then I just started realizing, there's people that they're struggling with what they put in their mind. They're struggling with not just what they put in their body. They're struggling how they feed their body, mind, and spirit. And that's kind of how I came to the evolution of 5 steps a day.
I like that. So I think the next question I have for you is what mindset do you have to abandon in order to really build that sustainability and that structure to be able to get to that place?
Well, here's one of the first things that I like to say is that everybody, whether you realize it or not, everybody really needs to know where is the proverbial land of milk and honey. Okay. A lot of people don't, when you talk about that, they'll go, oh, I really don't know. I'm in my 20s. I'm in my 30s. They're not sure where they want to go. I always feel like when I talk to somebody that's in their 40 and older, right? their eventual goal is, health, wealth, and happiness. And which is a great thing to have, right? But there has to be a motivating thing to get you where you want to go. And for a lot of people, they sometimes don't know, they don't know where the proverbial land of milk and honey is, but then they complain when they arrive at the land of heartaches and headaches. And so, we all have to make decisions. Choices are, if I talk to a younger crowd, college age, if they're younger than college age and everything, they're not used to making a lot of choices. 5 years earlier, they didn't have a whole lot of choices to make. In 5 more years, they're going to have more choices they're going to have to make. And a lot of times the way we're raised and taught and everything, they may not be aware that, hey, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? They're so busy learning math, science, history that no one's really ever taught them about, where do you want to go? What do you see? What do you envision for yourself? And so one of the things we talk about in 5 steps, as far as one of the steps is, where is your proverbial land of milk and honey? Do you know where it's at? If you don't know, that's okay. I always tell her, you can still ready the ship to sail, right? You don't have to know exactly where you want to go. If this is the first time for you to hear something like this, you can still, hey, as I said, ready the ship. Hey, you can build your self-esteem, your self-confidence. Just remind yourself that I can do it. I'm strong. I'm healthy. Whatever phraseology you want to use, but you can make that part of you. And as you start thinking about, yeah, I think I do want to plan because that's what I want to see. I want to be healthy, wealthy, wise. I want to own this. I want to do this. I want to be in this kind of shape. What's going to motivate you?
Let me ask you this. Do you think that there's a mindset that we have to abandon to get to that place?
Yeah, I think so, because what I've learned in my study is they say, and this is one of the steps I talk about, is for they according to the mind guys or the scientists, they guesstimate that we process about 50,000 thoughts a day. And when I first heard that, I thought that was crazy. But as I started reading more and more and more, and all the research was kind of pointing back to that. But here's the thing that was really more astounding to me. Of the 50,000 thoughts we process a day, about 80% of those thoughts are yesterday's negative thoughts. Think about you're replaying old reruns, and I think you and I know what reruns are before all the Netflix and stuff came out. But you're in your mind, 80% of your thoughts are rehashing yesterday, and you're rehashing all the negative thoughts also. And it's like when you think about it, right now today's the world of likes and dislikes, right? Mm-hmm. You get 9 comments that say you're fantastic, you're great, you're wonderful. That one person that says you stink, that sits in your craw and that holds on to you. But that's what happened. Our mindset is this way. We need to kind of move that mindset. You reap what you sow. What kind of thoughts are you feeding yourself? You just constantly just kind of going through the day. There's so many distractions out there, right? TVs, radio, cell phone, that little thing keep beeping and clicking and saying, "Oh, somebody send me something, somebody wants," and so, oh, okay. Oh, look at that cat. That's a good, they get pulled away and they can't consciously think about where it is what they want to do. And so, yeah, the mindset is definitely needs to be moved. And to go back to what you were saying, 80-20, 80% of your thoughts are negative. I mean, we don't have to go from 80-20 to 50-50, but I think for some people, they will start noticing a change if they go from 78 to 22, if I'm doing my math right. Just a little bit of progressing. You don't know. And so that's what we're trying to do, just help you start moving in the right direction. And like anything else, when you start something new, it always feels awkward, right? But it's about, overcoming some of those awkwardness. And I know, one of my steps is, did you think better today, right? Did you give yourself some kind of words of encouragement for yourself? And I know people say, well, you mean self-talk, Doc? I don't know about self-talk. Everybody has self-talk. Everybody's talking to themselves, but it may feel awkward to you to consciously talk to yourself, because unconsciously there's a lot of that old stinking thinking going on. But you have to sit there and say, hey, what kind of thoughts am I feeding my mind? And I know some people, when I've thought before, they go, so you're saying if I repeat this magic phrase a bazillion times, that's going to make me A, B, or C. I don't know if it's going to, I always say I can't give you an absolute number, but I will say this. let's say for in the morning, you gave yourself that little 1 minute pep talk. And then maybe at lunchtime, you gave yourself another 30-second, 1 minute pep talk. Maybe again at the evening time, you get, 3 minutes of some good confident talk that I feel good. I feel strong. I'm a winner. Whatever your verbology you want to use. But the thing I really want to point out is that's 3 minutes. You're not kicking yourself in the rear end about what you're not. And so is that enough to turn the tide to where now we're starting to flow this way a little bit? Who knows? But to stay where you're at, you're going to keep getting the same result if you keep doing what you've been doing.
Boy, is that true. Where do you think that most people misunderstand what personal growth really is for them?
You know, kind of like what I was saying a minute ago, I think for a lot of people, it's foreign to them. It was foreign to me when I first got out of college back in the '80s, early '80s when I got, but it was like, okay, I know how to do math, science, and history and all that kind of stuff, but I had never been told or taught about that. And, I played a lot of sports. I wasn't very good, but I played a lot of sports. I say that so any of my old friends would say, you stunk. But it was, what kind of thoughts are you putting into your mind each and every day? And for a lot of people, unfortunately, we're just putting some thoughts that keep us one way, and you need to actually take that step, take some kind of action step. And in fact, that was the first name I was going to call 5 steps today. I was going to call it action steps, because we're trying to just take steps on how we feed our body, mind, and spirit. And I thought, action steps is, I wasn't a marketing guy, but I just didn't think that was the right one. So went with 5 steps a day.
I love it. For a lot of us that are having to move into these new areas of that personal growth, it kind of requires a bold move. So my question for you is do you think that boldness is confidence, or do you think it's commitment?
I think it can be both. I think you can be bold, but not be arrogant. How arrogant are you about your boldness? And for some people, they can step over the line, and maybe they'll have a spouse that will, or a loved one that will say, let's just pull you back a little bit. You're just a little too, you're coming off like we're never going to have friends again because of it's invited to dinner again if you keep talking like that. And I think that might have been my wife telling me these kind of stories. Well, you live and learn.
I like that. I think those are the same conversations my husband and I have as well. So I totally relate with that. Walk us through what the core idea behind your 5 steps a day is. What are those steps? What are they really building in someone over time?
And what I always talk about, everybody knows how that, they track their physical stuff, right? Which is great. You're tracking your physical. It's great if you're a walker, right? If you're a runner, you can see how physically active you are. So what I'm trying to do, the word steps is an acronym for sleep, think, eat, physical, and spirit. In less than 2 minutes every day, you can shade in the step for the activity you took. And there's something about visually seeing all those steps in a day, in a week. You can say, oh, I've done pretty good this week. I took a potential 35 steps. I've taken 27 steps this week. Patches up on the back. There could be other weeks you scan up because it's an app. You could sit there and go, oh, I only took like 10 steps this week. I didn't do as well. And so it's just like kind of like the thing on the Shark Tank. Show me the numbers. Well, here's just a way to get some information. Are you really doing the things you need to be doing to get where you want to go? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And if I'll briefly share what each one of the steps is, and I'll go. And I'm going to stick in my brand. I'll start with P. Did you get physical today? I'm not asking if you had if it's a hard workout, easy workout. Did you do anything physical today? If you did, shade in the P. Did you eat right today? I'm not asking you if you followed your diet perfectly, but did you at least, like just for simple terms, did you at least have more good meals than bad? Right? And if you did, shade in the E. That was for your body. What about for your mind? How are you feeding your mind? Excuse me. And I say, the T, did I think better today? Kind of what we were talking about earlier. Can you a little bit of self-talk to encourage and remind yourself? I mean, like an athlete, or, not even an athlete, but you don't step up to the plate, up to the free throw line, up to the microphone, thinking, oh, this is not going to be good. I'm not sure. You have to go up there with boldness. And those that have been successful at it, those are those kind of people. But if you thought better today, did you pat yourself on the back a little bit? Shade in that T. How are you feeding your subconscious mind? right? We spend a third of our life asleep. Do you go to bed? Do you fall asleep with the cell phone in your hand or your remote control in your hand, and you allow your subconscious to feed on whatever it is that was most pertinent, prior to falling asleep? Or do you sleep and dream good thoughts? Do you sleep with a smile on your face because you're visualizing, you're dreaming about that land of milk and honey that you want to get to, and that dream that you're focusing on? It could be like tomorrow's interview. It could be tomorrow's test, tomorrow's presentation. Tomorrow you're going to meet the boss, whomever. Like for one of mine was getting married. That was like more than almost 30 years ago, because I wanted to be married, right? I was been a single for a long time, but it's, can you program your subconscious mind? Just remind yourself when you fall asleep at night, dream about, hey, that land of milk and honey. Are you setting every molecule in your body to kind of feel that? And what's really fascinating is that when you close your eyes, you can visualize. And the longer after you give thanks when you fall asleep, the longer you can kind of visualize that dream you want to see happening, the more that smile grows on your face. And sometimes at nighttime, this smile just grows so big that it's like it changes my thoughts for a second, because it's like that's a big smile. And so, and what I always try to tell people, guys, if you can't imagine your dreams coming true with your eyes closed, think about it. How much harder is it going to be to make those dreams come true with your eyes wide open, right? So, what are you feeding your subconscious? And the last S, did you work your spiritual muscles? To neglect your spirit is like skipping a meal that leaves you empty. And, coming from the sports background, I knew for my physical body, if I just worked my body once a week, once a month, twice a year, I may not be in the kind of physical shape I need for the physical challenges I may be up to this week, right? And the same way with your spiritual muscles. We're going to be you struggle with career, spouses, kids, illness, job, unemployment, all kinds of different things out there. And so how strong are your spiritual muscles to weather the various different storms that are out there? But if you did work your spiritual muscles, there's different ways, right? Reading, attending service, fellowship, listening to music, listening to the podcast. Those are all great ways to say, hey, I did something to nourish my spirit. By the end of the week, you could just look and see, hey, I'm doing something constructive. It's kind of like Seinfeld's calendar. If you're familiar with Seinfeld's calendar, it's kind of my take, other than just, writing jokes and seeing how many jokes you wrote for the day. If you're something that makes you feel better, this is just about, hey, am I feeding body? Am I feeding my mind? Am I feeding my spirit? And if you are, great, hopefully that moves you to a better place for yourself.
I love that. That resonates with me so much because as you and I were talking even before we started recording, I was bedbound for 3 years with my chronic illness. And so it was really that building from the ground up for me. And I really had to rebuild that identity again. And so much of those steps, as basic as they sound, they are so important. And we often neglect and we don't prioritize them because I think we often think that, well, they'll just be there tomorrow for us. We can do it again tomorrow. So I'm curious, which step do you think most people skip?
It depends who I'm talking with, right? Which group, I'm talking to a group that's more fitness minded. They may, I think the subconscious, when sleeping with good thoughts and everything. And I always try to tell everybody, we know it's not good to feed your body junky food before going to bed at night, right? But how many of us feed our mind junky thought, feed our subconscious because we fell asleep with the remote control on, the worst, the cell phone right next to you, right? Those kind of things that you allow that some of those fearful, negative, worrisome thoughts to rule your subconscious mind, your subconscious thinking for the next 7-8 hours. And so I think that's the harder one. I have to confess also, there's time I just jump in bed and everything. And it's like, oh yeah, good night, honey. I'm out. But when I can sit here and really focus, that's kind of, I think there's something to that.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm over here nodding my head like it's broken because I absolutely, fully, 100% agree with you on these. Which step do you believe produces the longest term shift, you think?
I don't know. I think the eating, the physical one is so much easier to really, see in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those are the ones, so a lot of my patients, and I'll be honest, years ago, what I would tell some of my patients that, hey, think about, they're asking me for help in their health and their diet or their life, their health dilemma. And I say, just, when I see you next week, just remember that you're going to have an opportunity to take 21 steps towards better health. 21, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. That's my magic number, right? And so, I'm not expecting everybody to have 21 perfect meals. I can't tell you how many people will try to argue with me and try to debate me. Do I got to get 21? I go, listen, you can do whatever you want to. All I'm trying to tell you, if you have 18 good meals and 3 bad meals, I think that's a whole lot better than having 12 good meals and 9 not so good meals, because, home runs are great, doing 21 perfect days. But, like in baseball, you can win with base hits. And so just doing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more than what that's working against you, I think that'll just start slowly making progress for yourself.
I think you almost answered my next question for you, which is that I think that there's a few of us out there, I'm probably one of those, that when I set my mind to something, then, well, if I have to eat healthy and if I have to rebuild myself in a certain way, then it can often sometimes become where you're almost burnt out because you practice those habits so much that you put yourself in a box of structure, like I can't be outside of that. So I'm hearing that you're saying that there needs to be a balance then to give yourself grace on both sides then. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because again, my background is in fitness and everything as well, and so I say, did you do anything physical? Did you carve out some time to do anything physical? I'm not asking if it was a full workout, half workout, aerobic, anaerobic, high intensity, low. Did you do something? In the same way with eating, for a lot of people, in my opinion, they'll follow a diet and they'll do good for the first 2 days, 3 days, 6 days, whatever that number is. And then all of a sudden, oh, they run out because they fall off the wagon because they went out with friends or family and they were having desserts and appetizers and drinks and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, I blew my diet. But they never want to get back on the diet again. They don't want to get back on the wagon. They think, well, I ruined everything, and they don't start up again. That's why I say, hey, if you have a good breakfast, great. If you have a good lunch, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We're all starting from different starting points, right? Some people, when I talk to them, they go, Doc, it has to be organic. It has to be grass fed. I have other people that, for them, it's just about, not having a second serving, not having dessert, not drinking a gallon of cold liquid with your meal and everything. That's going to help you. So everybody's on a different level, but can you do more of the good things that are going to help you get there? Yeah, it'd be nice to take 3 steps forward every day, so to speak, as far as your dieting efforts. And I think that applies to everything, but 2 steps forward and 1 step backward still has you moving in the right direction. And we're talking about progress. What's the old expression? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with that first step.
Many of our listeners, they're kind of, I would say some of us are high capacity leaders that we're navigating a lot of that kind of pressure every day. And when we're making those bold moves into that, what is bigger, better, bolder? What does all that look like when somebody already feels kind of stretched? Is there like a daily practice that you can encourage us with to start with, maybe as we're going through that?
Let's find out where you're at, because when people always tell me what they're doing, they would fill out my health questionnaire and I go, oh, this is where the problem is. They didn't see that was a problem because they're looking at it one way. And so just trying to first get some numbers. Are you really feeding your body as good as you say you are? Are you really giving yourself some positive words to yourself? That's self-talk. Some people are, some people aren't. For some people, it's so foreign, they don't want to think about it. But as I say, people travel by themselves, they work out, they sleep, they dine by themselves. So you can talk to yourself. It may feel a little awkward to begin with, but guys, in my opinion, I don't think the world is filled with born leaders and positive thinkers. Those are just learned skills. Are you going to learn them or not? That's the bigger question, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Going back to that first word that you used in a conversation, that growth must match capacity, not that ego. If leadership doesn't require perfection, but it does require responsibility, how does daily growth protect someone from drifting away entirely or shrinking because, it's just too much to handle? How does that synthesize?
Well, I think then that comes back to what we talked about as far as your spiritual strength. because, having a strong body is going to help you with those physical challenges. Oh, I got a flat tire. Oh, I need to carry all these bags of dirt to the backyard. Those are going to be that physical challenging thing for you, or, trying to do a race and stuff like that. But when, some of the other challenges that you were kind of talking about, maybe business oriented, leading others and them depending on you, it's, what are you grounded in? Where are you getting your strength from? And so, I'm a big believer in the word and everything. And so there's so much that when I read, gosh, how did you know I needed to read this today? This is exactly what I wanted to read today. I needed to hear this. Thank you. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I love it. Before we wrap, there is a question I ask everybody, and I think this is a really good one, especially for you today as the listeners are tuning in. What is one small daily practice that the listeners can take from this conversation today that takes into their next week to becoming bigger, better, bolder in that grounded way?
Okay, here's the one I'm going to say. Every morning when you wake up in the morning and your feet hit the ground, okay, how long does it take you before you tell yourself anything good? I feel great. I can do it. I'm going to have a great day. Life is great. Whatever that is. Do you not say that to yourself until after you get to the bathroom, after you shower, after breakfast, after walking the dogs, after getting to the office, getting the kids to school? How long before you give yourself that mental pat on the back? And I think that's the tip I want you, to travel with right now. Just think, okay, do I tell myself anything? Unfortunately, for a lot of people, right when they wake up, ooh, this turns on. This turns on. I'm talking, there's my music. There's my TV. I've got to grab my phone. Distractions, distractions, distractions. We're trying to find out, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to that land of milk and honey? Do you know where that's at? Can you see it? Because if you don't know where you're going, it's easy to get averted to that land of heartaches and headaches.
I think you kind of were a little bit speaking of me, and it'll be interesting tomorrow morning. I'm sure it's already going to be in my brain. Oh, there's Dr. Len again. I can hear it. But I think you're so right. And I think that's such valuable advice. I really appreciate that. Where can listeners go to learn more about your work and the 5-step frameworks that you do have?
Thank you. You can go. I created an app called 5 Steps a Day. You can download it on Google or Apple, and it's just a simple way to track what you're doing, right? How you're feeding body, mind, and spirit. And if you want to learn more about, Dr. Land, it's just more valuable tips on health, wellness, and stuff like that I'm credentialed for and stuff like that. You can just go to drlenlopez.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap, I always like to remind you, you don't have to be whole to lead. Leadership doesn't begin once everything is resolved. It begins when you root yourself in that truth, when you realign with what matters, and you choose to rise with the responsibility right where you are. Have a great day, everyone.